Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Garibaldi Red, a Nottingham Forest podcast as the Reds miss out on Champions League football, Europa League football, and Conference League awaits for us. That doesn't have the sound of the brilliant chant that we had to the Champions League, but Forest will play in the Conference League next season after a defeat to Chelsea 1-0 on the final game of the season. Bittersweet in a way, slightly disappointing, but lots to be proud of after a fantastic season and great achievements that Forest have had throughout, and some special memories for sure. Excuse the voice, first of all. Lots of singing going on in the Upper Bryan Clough today. Different view. Left it to the last game of the season to take a different view rather than my usual seat in the main stand. And I've got to say, the atmosphere near the safe stand in the Upper Bryan Clough was brilliant. And the fans certainly did Forest proud today. Joined by Mark Turner. Mark, nice to see you, mate. Long time since we've had you back on the podcast. Long time since me and you have done a one-on-one and talked about it all. Last game of the season. I don't know. I'm a little bit deflated. Maybe that's my negativity coming in. But I've had some food. I've had a bit of water. I've calmed down. And I'm just slightly deflated that Forest haven't got at least Europa League football, considering we're just 1 point. Slightly frustrating.
Well, hello, Max. Yeah, it has been a while. Sorry, I came across very Ben Kenobi there. Well, hello. But it has been a while, mate. Our schedules haven't been lining up, so it's good that we're finally able to get on pod again.
You're just too busy, mate. You're too expensive.
Yeah. But it's great to be able to cover the last game with you, despite the outcome. It's interesting. We know that the Champions League theme music is iconic, and I heard it being suggested after the Manchester United Spurs final in the Europa Cup this last week that music was becoming similarly iconic. I don't know what the music is for the Conference League, but I'm wondering if it's that music that oftentimes gets played over memes when things are going really badly. The Titanic music, when it's being playing on like a flute or something, and it's being done in the wrong key. I'm sure people listening to this or watching this know what I'm talking about, but Max clearly doesn't. But I wonder if that's the music for Conference League. But whatever it is, that's the music that awaits Forest this next season. You know, broad strokes, yes, I share your disappointment. I've been very public in saying that I absolutely understand what a great fairy tale making the Champions League makes of this season and the cachet associated with being back in Europe's top competition. But I didn't think Forest were ready for it. And I think we've demonstrated that in the last couple of months in the Premier League. It wouldn't have been a good look to rock up to the Champions League and then get beaten about the head. And moreover, had we had to bolster the squad sufficiently to compete, I think that would have put us on very thin financial ice. I just think it's a bridge too far today. I said I'd like to see us in Europa, and it was especially painful today, wasn't it? Because everything lined up with Newcastle and Villa. But we are back in Europe, and now we have the luxury of going to play teams all over the continent whose names are great Scrabble scores.
Absolutely, mate. No, you've hit the nail on the head there. And I think that, I think because we've got used to the success this season, ultimately, when Forest went on that mad run over Christmas and the New Year period where we won 6 games in a row, and particularly can remember the one during, I think it was the Man United win and the Everton win away at Goodison, and all of a sudden we started dreaming, and then there was even the question of, are we going to face Liverpool for a title race and all of this, and you forget how kind of involved we were in it, and that's why it feels like a little bit of a disappointment now, because if this was any other season, Mark, and we were kind of mid-table and we had a great run in the past few games, this would have felt an amazing achievement, but it feels slightly underwhelming. Still great, don't get me wrong, and no disrespect to the Conference League, and we've got to play a playoff, which will be entertaining, and we've got to go to many teams if we can get through, first of all, fingers crossed. And we've got to go to many teams that will be interesting to play, but there is a little bit of that disappointment creeping in. And I said to someone today, they kind of said, well, maybe Forest weren't ready for the Champions League. Things are meant to be. And yeah, they are. But I think Forest were ready for the Europa League. Looking at the quality of the 2 teams in the final this season, Forest would have done all right. Believe me, I think we would have done okay. And look, Marinakis puts his money where his mouth simply is. He's done it for the past 5 years. He's done it for the times when Forest have got promoted. So I think he'd have done that if we'd got Champions League football, and we would have invested. We would have made sure that there was that investment in place. So disappointing. Let's talk the game anyway, Mark.
Well, before you jump on, just very quickly. So there are levels, right? And I don't just mean in terms of the competition. I mean in terms of the things that we want from that experience. Money is one, cachet is another, but also it's those halcyon nights at the City Ground. Like, how wonderful would it have been to have welcomed Real Madrid or Barcelona or Bayern Munich? And again, I joke about being in the Conference League and playing against teams whose names represent great Scrabble scores. But in the Europa Cup, you have that next tier of opposition that still, I think, gets the pulse racing. If you're playing against Roma or you're playing against Benfica or Atletico Bilbao or whoever it might be, that's still exciting. So again, I always kind of caveat this by saying, I know I'm not presently a season ticket holder. I don't live in the UK. And therefore, it's kind of easy for me to take a dispassionate view of this. Now, you're not in that position. You want to see top quality opposition at the City Ground and be able to have those experiences. I think those are in Forest's future. I just don't think we're quite ready for that. But when you look at the season as a whole, Max, it's so easy, isn't it, given the season we've had, to struggle to remember where our mindset was after 2 years of avoiding relegation by the skin of our teeth. At the beginning of this season, Max, if someone had said to us, I'll give you 12th, 13th, 14th, good run in the cup, pick a cup, don't care which one, quarterfinal, semi-final, go deep, would you take it? You would have bitten their hand off.
And not forgetting the results we've had this season. The Liverpool, Anfield, the great result against the 7-0 against Brighton.
Yeah.
Just results
beat
like
United,
that. Yeah.
Beat Chelsea, beat City. Only team to beat the champions on their patch this season. That's crazy. 3 Manager of the Month awards, 20-goal striker, Golden Glove winner. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. FA Cup semi-final. I mean, it's astonishing what this group of players and Nuno have accomplished this year, and the fans, with the support of the fans, because that's one thing you've heard a lot. I don't know if you get this commentary quite so much in the UK, but here in the US, when the broadcasters are talking about the City Ground, they always comment on, this is one of the best environments in world football. That's you, Forest fans. Like, you contributed to this amazing season. So yes, 8 points from the last 8 games. It ended with a bit of a whimper. But again, add to that list of things that Forest did this year, back in Europe. It's a remarkable season.
Absolutely, mate. No, spot on. We are live on Facebook, Nottingham Forest News, and YouTube. Garibaldi Red.
I should have done my hair.
Put the makeup on, mate, quickly. Go and trim the beard.
Too late for that, fella.
So do be sure to get your comments in. Brett says, gutted but proud. Terrible goal to concede, but the last 6 games have been too much for a small and cheap squad. The playoff games will be the hardest until the last 16. More worried about them. That's an interesting point, actually. I mean, in terms of the game, Mark, what did you make of it? Because Brett talks about that goal there, and it was a disappointing goal to concede. There was a bit of laziness and a bit of sloppiness, particularly, I thought, defensively today from Forest, and it kind of summed up the story of the past couple of games, particularly against Brentford and Leicester, just off the top of my head, that Forest seemed to struggle on what the trademark's been this season, which was defending well and launching those quick counter-attacks. And we've still launched the quick counter-attacks and we've had chances. Yes, we've not taken that many recently in the last few games, but particularly defensively, that's cost Forest a point and Europa League football.
Yeah, it was a scrappy, ugly goal. And probably, in the same way that the Manchester United Spurs Europa Cup final was absolutely insipid and the goal that won the final was just about perfect. Similarly today, it was a goal worthy of a game of the quality of the game today. I will say Forest played well, I think, in the first half. Definitely on the front foot. Chelsea had their moments, but I felt like we were well in control in that first 45 and felt pretty bullish about our prospects in the second half. That goal obviously came early. And then I think both teams' lack of quality was exposed. And that's probably a little unfair. I think Forest are a better team than Chelsea. I just do. And by team, I mean truly like team, like the way they operate, tactically how they approach a game. To me, Chelsea is still held together with scotch tape and chewing gum. Like, I don't know what their identity is. I was talking to a mate of mine. We were watching the game and I said, if Chelsea win this game, it'll either be a horrendously ugly goal or it'll be a moment of brilliance, because in their front line, they have players who are world class and are capable of delivering that. Ended up being obviously the latter, the former rather than the latter. But in that second half, I felt like both teams kind of showed you the worst of themselves. Not really able to connect passes, not really looking threatening in the attacking third, looking devoid of ideas. And I will say as well, Max, high degree, it appeared to me at least, high degree of nervousness on the part of Forest players. It just seemed like the more they tried, the worse it got.
Yeah, it was a big occasion, and they seemed to just fall at that hurdle.
Yeah, and I think that's that's to be expected to a certain extent. You've got players there, and again, to be fair to Chelsea, in the Chelsea team too, who haven't maybe achieved a ton at this point in their lives, in this point in their careers, and so this is for some of those players new ground. But it looked like. It looked like we were struggling. And I will say as well, Max, I would have liked to have seen Alanga and Callum Hudson-Odoi on from the start. I think the one area where Forest are really solid going into this next season, and hopefully you and I can talk about recruitment here in a moment, or where it needs to happen, but is the centre of the park. For me, Dominguez is a central midfielder. If you include him in that mix, you've got Dominguez, you've got Sangare, you've got Yates, you've got Anderson, you've got Morgan Gibbs-White, you've got Danilo. Like you've got an abundance of quality players and a whole variety of different type of player to mix and match. Out wide is where we're struggling. Jota Silva can do a job, but he's not at the same level as Alanga or Callum Hudson-Odoi. Yeah. And I don't really understand why we had Dominguez out there. It didn't seem necessary.
I thought the Sangare substitution, that just kind of baffled me. I thought Sangare has been the best player for Forest in the past 3 games, I'd say, every time I've seen him play. Okay. I think he's becoming Premier League ready, Mark, and I think it was a bit disappointing to see Nuno bring him off. I didn't really understand it.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to end this season on a bum note. I'm not going to be critical. I like Sangare. I think he deserves some runway to show us what he can do. I don't think he's let anyone down in the last few games. I certainly wouldn't go as far to suggest he's been our best player in the last few games. I don't think he's been the best player in midfield in the last few games. I think for me, that nod goes to Anderson. But Sangare's a quality player and definitely needs to be in the mix. But yeah, as I said, that's the game we're on. Forest looked very nervy. It looked like we could play for another 2 weeks and not score a goal. Chris Wood was definitely off the boil, and it can happen. So it was, it was disappointing again with the Newcastle game and the Villa game ending up the way they did. They would have just taken a point, but sometimes Forest just got a Forest, don't they?
I thought that Forest did a Forest today, Mark, and that was the frustrating bit. and I just think that just how everything's just went such our way.
No.
And I mean, I know a few people that had bets on, bet responsibly and all, but even my dad had a bet for three games for so Forest to win, Everton to win, and United to win. He had a £10-20 on it. It returned something like £2,500.
Oh.
So the odds were almost against Forest, and no one would have expected that. I mean, you do feel sorry for Villa considering that kind of decision there.
I think what makes today so galling, and the whole, we're being a bit tongue in cheek saying Forest are going to Forest, but we have seen those things, or at least your generation has. This has been the model of Forest, so close and then not quite until finally we made promotion through the playoffs. But up until that point, it's always, the hope that kills you. And then this season, we saw something, again, for your generation in particular, uncharacteristic. We saw a run of wins. We saw Forest doing things they hadn't done before. We saw Forest beating teams they hadn't beaten before. And all of a sudden you're thinking, this is a brave new world. And then we show up on the last day of the season. Everything goes our way. All we need is a draw at home. It is deflating, isn't it? But anyway, great season, like I said, overall.
Yeah, no, I agree. Let's talk about a few key players, Mark, from today, or players that maybe had a little bit of a below par performance. We've got to single them out. We can't and there's many times we've come on here after great results and we've talked highly of players, but I talked about maybe some of them not stepping up today, and maybe looking nervy. I thought Olarena, since particularly he's come back from his injury, hasn't looked his usual self, and he looks slow. He looked, I hate to use the word for a professional footballer, he looked lazy today. And I just thought, particularly with some, just questionable things. The same with Murillo. We all love Murillo, but in the dying moments, don't try and play a beautiful. Just do the basics, Murillo. When Forest were like, the crowd was roaring them on, and it was just frustrating. There was, and I look at Jota Silva when he comes on, and we know Jota Silva isn't a Champions League player. We know it, but just do the basics in football, Jota, and he came on and tried to play this weird ball, and it ended up out for a goal kick, and it was just like in the dying moments of the game, you just knew it wasn't going to go Forest's way. So that's what frustrates me a little bit, Mark, is that these players have shown up on the big stage a lot of the time all season. When the pressure's got to them, they've dealt quite well with pressure. Roy Keane said that all Forest didn't deal well with pressure this season. I mean, I don't really agree with that. I think we've actually dealt quite well. But it's like just this final game, they seem to have struggled, and they looked a bit tired to me as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There were some below par performances. Again, I don't think it was a wretched game by Forest. I just think as the game wore on, nerves got the better of them. That being said, there definitely were some below par performances. You mentioned Murillo already. Aina breaks my heart. I actually ended up being my player of the season vote. I agonized over it for about 3 days before I finally threw a dart at the dartboard and landed on Aina's name, and he got my vote, because it really could have been any one of about 6 or 7 players. And you're right, since he's come back from the injury, he hasn't looked quite the same. Although I'm going to ask that we switch out the word lazy for the word frustrated. I just think he looked really frustrated today. Nothing was coming off for him. I don't think he was lazy. I think he worked hard. It just, again, the harder he worked, kind of the worse it got almost. Alanga, Callum Hudson-Odoi, Chris Wood, again, all below par performances. And then on the flip side, you have Morgan Gibbs-White absolutely running his socks off. Again, very little coming off for him, but, working like a Trojan. You have Milenkovic doing Milenkovic things. You had Nico Williams not giving up the ghost on anything. Ando had another good game. Well, good is relative, but compared to those players, he came up short today. But the one player I want to give a shout out to, who we haven't mentioned, because this is worth doing, because I know the City Ground were delighted to see him back and walking the turf. If that was all he could do today, was Taiwo Awoniyi. Obviously, you were at the stadium, so it sounded like he got a really good reception seeing Taiwo back on his feet at the City Ground.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. It was nice to see. I mean, just there's a lot more important things, isn't there, than football, and the fact that he's all right and he's healthy, and he seems to be okay. So yeah, and I just wonder whether that will make Forest change their decision on him in terms of the summer, whether they will because look, naturally an injury like that will knock a bit of money off Taiwo's price tag, and I all think we would have expected him maybe to depart this summer, but I wouldn't be surprised if he stayed around now and Forest kind of looked after him up until he came back from injury. But yeah, no, you're right. Nice to see him today, and nice at the end of the game that all the players kind of came round. I know obviously every club does it, and Forest have always done it every season, but the fans stayed in the stadium. The majority did, and it was nice to have that kind of lap of honour and appreciation, because it has been a positive season. It just feels like it's got to this final hurdle, and Forest have not let us down. I don't want to use that. Just slightly not got over the line, and it is frustrating. Mark,
as we're talking about individuals and people doing laps of honour, what's your take on Forest's player of the season? I mentioned there were probably 7 or 8 people who could have gotten that nod. It ended up being Milenkovic, and also we have a Golden Glove winner, as you mentioned earlier, Matt Sowers. What's your take on those two?
Yeah, I was funny actually. You just took the words out of my mouth. Milenkovic, as you always do, Mark, because you're a pro. Milenkovic, I totally agree. I voted for him as player of the season. I thought long and hard about it. I mean, I was actually tempted to give it to Matt Sowers, because I know he's sharing the Golden Glove, but to get the Golden Glove today, great award. When was the last time Forest was the Golden Glove around? When Forest last won it, I don't know. I can't give you I can't give you a name, Mark. I can't try and get it off the top of my head. So nice to see that. And I
I
was
think
telling
that's
the
the
vote
first time.
game.
I think it's the first time. Speaking of how long it's been around, I think it might be the first time a team outside of the top six has had a goalkeeper win the Golden Glove.
Right. Okay. Yeah. No. Brilliant. That's yeah. And I think that's testament to Forest almost challenging the top six narrative again that we've talked about all season and being up there and fighting. So yeah, I thought Milenkovic had another good game today. He deserves player of the season. For me, yes, Elliot Anderson could have come into it, but I just think Milenkovic's clearances and tackles, and I think if Murillo was to leave Forest tomorrow, we'd be slightly bit more comfortable having Milenkovic at the back rather than him not being there. And some people will argue that maybe Milenkovic overall is a better player than Murillo. And that's one to kind of discuss for another day. But yeah, nice to see him.
It's funny you should say that because last part of the season, I've got to do it. Milenkovic is Serbian, and so is my mate Trevor. And
knew Trev was getting a mention, Mark, tonight. Knew it. Could feel it in the air.
People have bingo cards to fill in, Max. We can't let the audience down. And so I pinged Trevor and said, "Oh, look at this, Milenkovic, player of the season, isn't it great?" And his response was, "It should have been Murillo."
He does split opinion, doesn't he? I mean, the whole topic splits opinion with Murillo and Milenkovic. But look, Forest are so lucky to have two brilliant defenders at the back. So that's, I just think that's a big positive. Defensively, Forest have got a brilliant back four. It just seems that they've not let us down. But I think I do think it comes from midfield, the mistakes in terms of almost the transition of play. And I think that's what's caught Forest out the past few games and almost these stumbling blocks that Forest have had to face. So good to see Matt Sells get the Golden Glove, though. I think he obviously deserves it, and it's just been a brilliant season for him. Really chuffed, actually. I think he faced a lot of criticism when he came through the door because he wasn't a big name keeper. Yet he's done a job. I mean, I called about Forest getting a new keeper last season, and look where that's got me. So absolutely. This comment from Michael: Max, Everton, Leicester, and now Chelsea. These three, the pressure of crumbled Forest. The team needs a makeover. We can just see who has to go and who has to stay. I mean, we could be here for a while. We're going to do a podcast hopefully next week, discussing those. Kind of discussing that question, a bit of an end of season awards and what Forest need for next season, but. I think I could give you a list of players that should leave, and I think I could give you a list of positions that Forest should strengthen in. I'll give you a few: striker, two wingers, and a midfielder. I don't know about you, Mark.
Sorry, having technical issues at my end. Can't press the button.
You can't get the stuff.
The strikers, the strikers, no brainer. In fact, I take your two, and I apply it to the strikers. I think we probably need at least two strikers. So we have, I think Taiwo's probably going to leave. I'm sure Forest already have an advert in Craigslist. One Nigerian striker, lightly bruised abdomen. So I think Taiwo is probably on his way out, most likely. I actually would like to see him stay at the City Ground. I think, he has a lot of the attributes to still contribute. Very physical, quick, eye for a scuffy goal. So I think it'd be interesting to have him still around this next year. But in the event he does go, Forest are going to need at least a couple of strikers. I think you're right, probably a couple of wingers as well. I'm not so sure about midfield. I mean, I already went through the list of names, the options Forest have in, depending on the formation, 2 or 3 positions. And it feels like we have coverage and depth and pretty decent quality. Now, I think there's the potential, obviously, for us to lose 1 or 2 of those midfielders in the summer. Morgan Gibbs-White, I know, being in the crosshairs of several of our rivals, those who could pay a lot more money as well. So in the event he goes, then clearly we need, to bring somebody in there to cover for him. I'm surprised that you didn't say centre of defence, because obviously we have Milenkovic and Murillo, but there's a sharp drop-off after that.
There is, and that's where, and I was talking about this in the car on the way back with the family, and we were on about kind of Forest players in terms of defence, and you forget there's Balotelli, who's been on a season-long loan or half a season loan, I can't particularly remember, and Willy Bolly, they're decent quality players, but they're not as good. And of course, Morato. So I don't know, Mark, whether Forest. I know you might not be, again, he's another player that split opinion. Maybe Forest do need another central defender, but I think if you're going to get another central defender, you probably need I think you might need another left or a right back, because we've seen when we've had injuries to Olarena this season, and when Nico Williams was unavailable, that was a position where Forest had to kind of, we had to play Dominguez at left back at one point.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And you lose Moreno, right? Almost forgotten the guy's name. He's made one appearance in the last 10, something like that. He's most likely going to go back to Villa as well. I mean, I think if Forest were really that interested in him, he definitely might be much more in and around the starting 11. So yeah, I mean, so we're saying, well, at least, I think potentially, especially with now having European games as well, potentially 2 centre backs, at least 1 fullback, 2 wingers, 2 forwards. So what does that put you at? 7-ish players. You can't get a decent player anymore, at least not one who's going to compete in Europe. Well, I'm about to shoot myself in the foot here and say for less than 20 million quid. That being said, our player of the season was 15 million quid. So I suppose it's doable. And then you look at Murillo, who we got for a bag of peanuts. Callum Hudson-Odoi, Anthony Elanga, the list goes on. But can Forest really find those kind of bargains 6 or 7 times over this summer in preparation for what's going to be a challenging league campaign, domestic cups, and now European competition as well? They have their work cut out for them. But I think if they're going to maintain a top 10 position, which now surely has to be the minimum aspiration, and they want to try and go deep in Europe, and also, try and do as well as they can in at least one of the cups domestically, they are going to need that depth. There's just no question about it.
Yeah, for sure. We'll see. We'll see what happens over the summer. There's lots to do, isn't there, as the dust settles in the next few weeks, and we look back on what's been a brilliant season.
Will Nuno still be here? Are we going to need to recruit a new manager?
I think that Nuno will be here, Mark. Yeah. I can't see Nuno leaving. I think a lot of the talk was just to unsettle Forest this week. I mean, it did really, maybe. But yeah, I can't see Nuno leaving. I wanted to get your thoughts quickly, Mark, before we wrap up. And we'll do more in-depth chats.
On Gary Neville?
No, not Gary Neville. No, I wasn't going to ask your thoughts on that, to be honest, mate. I'm a bit Gary Neville'd out with the amount of people sending me stuff and asking my opinion on it. It's like, you know what I mean? On the record, I actually kind of agree with it. What I was going to say now, I was going to ask you about Forest's game plan moving forward next season. Forest have prided themselves on almost this counter-attacking, fast-flowing football, but it only seems to work when almost we score first and we get that early goal. And today, I think, was another example where we struggle. We struggle when teams score first. And I haven't got the stats at hand, but there was a stat the other week where Forest were one of the worst in terms of coming back from conceding first. That's an issue they've got to address next season in terms of moving forward. And Nuno will know he's got to tweak that style of play, not just for that reason, not just for competing, because the Premier League gets tougher every year and there'll be new players that come in, but now possibly European teams. Forest will maybe be probably are favourites to win the Europa Conference League right now. I think if the bookies came out, Forest would be in the top 3 to win it. So that's where Nuno will have to look at his style of play and maybe ask questions. And I just think that we rely on teams scoring that first goal too much, and that's cost us recently.
Yeah, I think I could very well be wrong here, and I'm sure someone will comment immediately if I am. But I think Forest have only come from behind once this season, in the league at least, I think. But certainly it is an area of challenge. And it's interesting. Again, I was watching the game with some friends this morning, and one of my mates pointed out, part of the reason that this game is so lifeless is you've got 2 teams here who really do their best work on the counter attack. With the pace that they have out wide, neither of them are that comfortable with or used to having as much of the ball as they're allowing one another to have right now. And you saw that in the first half. I think that was part of the challenge. Forest were definitely the better team in the first half, but with as much of the ball as they had, didn't seem to quite know what to do with it. So that's another challenge that Nuno has. It's another kind of mystery he needs to crack, because Forest are going to have a couple of different ways of playing, again, particularly in Europe, playing in a different way against teams that approach the game differently. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how things develop this next year. Yeah. And it's interesting. You mentioned Forest are probably one of the favourites for the Conference League. They probably are. So much confusion around, are we in the Conference League? Are we in Europa? Who gets the extra spot? Does it go to another country? Is it like, if Chelsea win next week, does it make it? I think if Chelsea win next week, it only makes a difference in as much as Brighton get a conference spot, right?
No, I think that Forest. But I came out the ground thinking that we might get Europa League, but I was quickly shut down by a few people.
Oh,
So
Forest,
Forest have got the Conference League, and that's it. That's all we've got this season.
But I don't know if Chelsea win, if a spot goes to Brighton, or if it goes to another nation with a higher coefficient, if indeed there is one. But if Brighton's I think they would immediately become favourites, which is okay. Take the pressure off Forest.
Yeah, I need to lie down in a dark room with all these permutations. There was too much riding on today. I almost had to have the notepad out this week and working it out. But yeah, you're right, Mark. We'll see, and there'll be lots of things that happen over the summer in terms of recruitment and improving Forest for next season going forward. Yeah, positive season. Slightly disappointing today. I think I need to sleep on it.
I feel so bad for you because it's a whole other experience to be so proximate to the action, right? I'm watching it on TV. I'm 5,000 miles away. I've already kind of made my bed, which is I'm happy with Europa. I was bummed out when they didn't get the draw today that would have taken them there. That was frustrating. But also, you just turn the TV off and
go back to sleep.
Yeah, maybe just hang out with your mates, or go out and do some sort of get on with stuff, because you're not surrounded by people. Like, you're there, you're in the stadium, you're collectively trying to will them over the line, and then you have to file out the stadium, and you're walking down the street with everybody, and there's glum faces, and people are talking about what could have been, and then you're coming home with your dad in the car, and the fun.
And then you've got to do a podcast.
Yeah. Exactly.
No, exactly, mate.
I feel bad for you.
Yeah. Do you know what I need? I need Dave Asprey on speed dial. I might ring him after this to pick me up and tell me that everything's going to be all right. And well, of course it is, and it's been a brilliant season. It's just so close, but yet so far in a way. So, slightly disappointing, but bittersweet. I think Forest had a brilliant season, and there's been some very, very happy memories that we will all remember from this season, and the shirt that we wear and the displays that we've seen, and another brilliant display that for this afternoon's game, and just special memories. And there's so many to pick out, and I don't want to list them because we might be here all night, and of course we'll look back at it in the next few weeks, but it has been a brilliant season. So
honestly, Max, it has, even beyond Forest. Like, this has been one of my favourite seasons of recent memory.
It's been the most open in the Premier League, hasn't it?
Yeah, Forest being in the top 3 for so long, and then ultimately securing a place in Europe. Newcastle winning the FA Cup, Palace winning the League Cup, even Spurs. I mean, finally bucking the Spursy trend. Arsenal women taking down Barcelona women yesterday as we're recording. That was fantastic. I'm no fan of Liverpool, so that kind of took the edge off it for me. But other than that, yeah, it's been a really, really good season. And I wonder if this is a bellwether for how football is going to be moving forward. I mean, it may not be. We may be sat here a year from now and Man City have won everything again, or it's just them and Liverpool basically contesting all the silverware. But I really hope, as the budgets in the Premier League are starting to equalise a little bit because of the TV money, are we going to see more of this? Are we going to see Forest up there again, and Brighton up there again, and Brentford if they recruit well, or Fulham? Or I love to see that. It sort of harkens back to when I was a kid coming up. I got sucked into supporting Forest because of one Mr. Brian Clough and 2 European Cups. I mean, I just did, right? Because Forest were punching above their weight. They were scrappy. They were the rebel city. I love that, and I'd love to see more of it. So hopefully this season is a sign of more to come.
Absolutely. That ends us pretty nicely, Mark. Beautiful words as always, mate. Thanks for your contributions this season. We'll hopefully get you on next Saturday, aiming for the last podcast for a while. I better go and pack a suitcase because I'm off on holiday in the morning and it's 9:10 and I've got to leave here at 4 a.m. So I better go and pack a suitcase ASAP. But yeah, we'll be back next Saturday, hopefully, for a bit of a review show where we'll try and get the majority of contributors to contribute, whether that is pre-recorded on a little video or it is live on a big podcast. We will release all the dates and times and where you can find that in due course. But thanks for all your support this season, to the viewers, to the listeners, and to Mark as well, and to every contributor that comes on. It means a lot. It's not easy doing this podcast 24/7 at times, but Mark and Dave and Sam and Steve and Sarah, I could go through a whole list of people, make it very, very easy and make it an easy job for me. So thank you. And thanks, Mark, for stepping in when I've been on holiday about three times this season. Get ready for you stepping in for the 5 weeks when I'm off to South America next week traveling. So yeah, that's why I won't be here for 5 weeks, but Mark will be here with an episode, Max will be here with an episode, and Sam will be here with an episode. So different hosts, and we'll try something new, and you'll have those three. But don't miss me too much. I'll be back at the end of July. Mid-July, and we'll take it from there, and we'll get ready for another season. It's been a brilliant one. It's been great covering it from a personal point of view, and it's been great getting so many people on the podcast. And that's what's great. And we talk to people like Mark in the States, and there's many people around the world that listen and watch us that can't get close to the City ground. So that's what it's all about. Sharing opinions. So it's been another brilliant one, and long may it continue. We will keep you updated in the next couple of weeks of what we're doing. Of course, transfer speculation will be across it, and any news if Forest decide to ban somebody else from Sky, we'll be here talking about it, of course, throughout. And yeah, appreciate all the support, all the love, all the comments this season, all the contributions to the podcast. And we will see you next week for our finale of the season, and then a couple of weeks break before I come back ready and raring to go for the new season. Mark, thanks as ever, mate. Enjoy whatever you're doing for the next week. The season's done. Can you believe it just finishes on a random Sunday?
I know, it's astonishing. Well, Max, you've done a great job again with this podcast this year, mate. You are wise and capable beyond your years, although it does sound like your voice is finally breaking today. So excited to hear that. Congratulations on that.
Brian Clough-Stan's done this to me, honestly, singing.
What a remarkable season. I mean, what a season for the ages. If you are a Forest fan and you're not entertained this year, I don't know what to tell you. Great job, Reds. Great job.
Absolutely. Brilliant job, and a great season covering it on the podcast. Right. That's it from us. We'll be back next Saturday. Then it'll be a few other people here, but we'll keep you updated throughout the summer. So do give us a like, share, and subscribe on YouTube and Facebook, Nottingham Forest News, and YouTube Garibaldi Red. Leave us a review if you do enjoy on Apple Podcasts. That means a lot to us throughout the season, and we will see you very soon as Forest fall short on the final day of the season. But Conference League awaits for us. There's lots to be proud of this season. Bye-bye.